Don't get cocky, Slimer. I've been watching.
The thing about the Ghostbusters movie was that it appealed to kids as much as it appealed to adults, a feat that only a few movies achieve. The trend obviously continued with the animated shows, and if you looked closely, you will find a number of episodes in the two shows that deal with very adult themes, including, but not limited to, the loss of parents, prejudice and racism, childhood trauma, and mental health issues. Although you won't find these stories scary any longer, you will find them relatable, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the 10 such Ghostbuster cartoon episodes that truly dealt with adult and dark themes. Oh, and one of them also features Cthulhu. Yep, the same one. But before I begin, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Those two small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these marvelous videos. And now, let's begin. Number 1. The Boogeyman Cometh. All about childhood trauma, anxiety, and neglect. The episode begins with a chase and a ghost gangster named Louie who tries to scare the Ghostbusters, but as you can expect, it fails miserably. In fact, one trap later, he's toast. Back at the firehouse, Peter's at war with Slimer once again and threatens him with Egon's latest invention, the Ghost Bomb. The thing could vaporize every spirit in a 50-yard radius, which includes Slimer, since he's also a ghost, but it's unfinished because Egon can't power it. Probably for the best, since Peter's patience with gadgets and ghosts alike tend to run short. Things take a darker turn when two kids, Megan and Kenny Carter, walk into the firehouse looking terrified. Their parents won't believe them, but something keeps creeping out of their closet at night. When they mention the name Boogeyman, Egon's blood runs cold, and we soon realize that this isn't just another haunting. The team takes the case for free, which says plenty. That night, the readings in the Carters' bedroom spike, and right at midnight, the closet bursts open. The Boogeyman steps through, all horns and hate, a walking embodiment of childhood trauma. The Ghostbusters unleash everything they have and force it back into the dark while the kids scream and their parents stare, convinced they've hired lunatics. Back at HQ, Egon digs into the archives and discovers that the Boogeyman doesn't haunt places or people, and instead, he hunts fear. He slips through closets like they're doorways into a child's mind, choosing victims who already live with anxiety and neglect. The team decides to bait him. They rent an overpriced apartment, decorated like a child's room, and elect Ray as bait since he's apparently the most childlike, which, coming from Peter, is less anything and more an insult. Anyway, the trap works until it doesn't. The Boogeyman slips through another portal, dragging them into his realm, a world stitched together from nightmares and empty doors. With no power source for the Ghost Bomb, Egon does the unthinkable and hooks up all 4 proton packs to overload it. The Carter kids, summoning courage no child should have to, face their monster while the Ghostbusters escape. The bomb detonates, sealing the creature in its twisted world for good.
With no way home, ever, but I just got season tickets to...
Number 2. Knock Knock. All about ultimate sacrifices and hell spilling into Earth. Now, if you thought a haunted bowling alley was bad, imagine accidentally opening the gates of hell under New York City. That's exactly what happens in Knock Knock, one of the darker and more unnerving Ghostbuster episodes. It starts with the Ghostbusters busting ghosts at Bowlrama Bowling, where bowling balls and shoes are possessed. The Ghostbusters win, but the alley is in ruins, and their patients shot. Back at the firehouse, Slimer is, of course, eating like a slob again. Janine has given up trying to stop him, and Peter nearly turns him into green mist before the others tackle him. While they argue over who has to empty the ghost traps, the real horror is quietly waking beneath the city. Down in the subway tunnels, a group of workers uncover an ancient Sumerian door marked "Do not open until doomsday." Naturally, one of them opens it. The portal tears open, releasing ghosts, demons, and something that definitely isn't MTA approved. The workers die before they can even scream, and New York becomes an all-you-can-haunt buffet. When Janine alerts the guys, they rush to the subway, only to find it plastered in ectoplasm and crawling with graffiti that's literally alive. They board a train to investigate, but the ride quickly turns horrific. The lights flicker, the air turns cold, and when the car lights up again, the seats are full of corpses, with the original passengers reanimated and staring. the possessed train eventually deflates like a balloon, leaving the Ghostbusters stranded in what might as well be hell. Deeper down, they find a stone tablet written in Sumerian and the Doomsday Door itself, an ancient gateway meant to replace the world once it ends. The spirits here are beyond rescue, and the Ghostbusters realize they have to overcharge their proton packs and use the energy to seal the gate. It means trapping themselves on the wrong side, and for a few dreadful moments, that's exactly what happens. But through some quick thinking and reckless science, they break free as the door slams shut. This one had two very intriguing themes: the blurring of the boundaries between hell and earth, and second, it was about sacrifice. The episode featured a ghost ship filled with damned souls condemned to row through an underground river for eternity, with the skeletal captain mocking them by saying, "Look, more dirt." And watch that. Ooh, more dirt. We've got all of eternity. The episode ends with the Ghostbusters having to sacrifice themselves by becoming trapped in the Doomsday Door to seal it forever, and they only escape through the willingness to make that ultimate sacrifice. But this was remarkably mature for a children's show.
Your sight must forsake.
Number 3. Tenebrog the Unseen, all about body horror and eyeless blind people. Now, if you ever thought a cartoon about ghost hunting couldn't double as light horror for adults, The Unseen from Extreme Ghostbusters will fix that notion real quick. The episode begins innocently enough at Kennedy Airport, where a customs officer cracks open a crate from Moldova. Inside was a blood-red orb, glowing like it knows something you don't. The poor man stares a little too long. The dog starts growling, and before you can say Class 13, his eyes are gone. Clean out. What crawls out of that orb is Tenebrog, a demon so grotesque you'd swear the animators lost a bet. Its entire body is covered in twitching eye stalks, each crowned with the eyes of past victims, and its stomach holds thousands more. And yes, all of that made into a kid's cartoon. While Egon and the gang are still dealing with severed ghosts in the train yard, Eduardo manages to lose the proton pistol mid-battle. It gets picked up, pawned, and traded around like cursed junk on eBay. Before long, two kids accidentally fire it, nearly toppling half the city's infrastructure. Meanwhile, Roland and Garrett trace a string of eye thefts from the airport to the Metropolitan Museum, where the orb of Moldova has conveniently resurfaced. Egon finally pieces it together. The orb isn't a relic, it's a demonic prison, and anyone who looks at it pays the price in eyeballs. When Tenebrog attacks the museum curator, the Ghostbusters split up. Kylie and Eduardo, still empty-handed and neck-deep in frustration, track the stolen weapon to a pair of thugs using it for petty crime. Things spiral when the same criminals rob a bank and land the Ghostbusters in police custody. Egon is mid-arrest when he realizes the orb's unveiling gala is that evening. The clock ticks, the demon feeds, and the cleaning lady at the museum becomes its next victim. Tenebrog basically recites the following rhyme: "Scared sight you did partake, now your sight you must forsake." Chilling stuff for 1997 afternoon TV, especially for kids. Kylie and Eduardo break into the gala to stop the ritual. They stuff a terrified administrator into a sarcophagus, blindfold themselves, and bait the demon with its own relic. When Tenebrog sees the orb's reflection, every stolen eye rips out of its flesh and flies back to its owners. Eduardo smashes the orb, the demon dissolves, and peace returns. Or whatever passes for it when your coworker's still arguing about who lost the proton pistol first. This one had some very real body horror, with the demon's horrifying design, complete with writhing eye stalks crowned with stolen eyes, and a stomach containing thousands of eyeballs from millennia of victims. Furthermore, victims with empty eye sockets stumbling around blind was not a pretty picture either. The body horror elements of this episode would have been right at home in an R-rated horror film, yet somehow aired as a children's cartoon.
I built it all myself. Every inch of it has the word.
Number 4. The Thing in Mrs. Faversham's Attic, all about losing a parent and inherited trauma. Agatha Faversham's story begins the way all good ghost stories do, with something scratching in the attic that shouldn't be scratching. The elderly woman, who hasn't dared set foot up there in 70 years, wakes to strange noises and decides she's had enough. Enter the Ghostbusters, who arrive expecting another run-of-the-mill haunting. What they walk into instead is a 70-year-old packed with something far worse. At first, the house feels empty. No readings, no cold spots, no slime. Then the entire place quakes, and the attic seems to breathe. When they finally pry open the hatch, The space stretches far beyond the physical limits of the house, an endless dim world of dust and echoing whispers. The walls literally watch them. Eyes blink beneath the wallpaper. Then come the toys. Dozens of antique tin soldiers march forward and attack like possessed wind-up nightmares. When Peter falls near a coat rack, it turns and speaks, calmly at first, until he mentions the name Faversham. Upon hearing that, the furniture grows teeth, the air turns rancid, and a deep voice demands they bring Faversham or die in her place. Back at the firehouse, Egon digs into the mystery. Turns out Agatha's father, Charles Faversham, wasn't content with being a good parent. He wanted to be a great one, the kind who could buy his daughter's happiness wholesale from the infernal catalog. He summoned an entity named Belleranthon, promising it something in return for wealth and comfort. When the bill came due, he panicked, sealed the creature in the attic, and made his daughter swear never to enter it. For 70 years, that demon stewed in its prison, shaping the attic into its own private hell and waiting for someone to break the rule. Egon baits the demon with a fake Charles Faversham, and who better for that job than Slimer? Dressed in an old suit and wig, Slimer had easily the least convincing disguise in human or ectoplasmic history. The entity, however, takes the bait and tears open reality for one last strike, and Egon springs the trap. Belleranthon screams, folds in on itself, and vanishes. After the dust settles, Agatha offers tea, and Peter, who admits she reminds him of his late mother, and stays behind. For a series aimed at kids, the episode lingers on some adult fears and themes of inherited trauma, forbidden knowledge, and the consequences of dabbling with forces beyond human comprehension. Additionally, it also deals with the trauma that children suffer after losing a parent or both. Once again, pretty heavy stuff for young children, and mostly it is the adults who can relate with them.
They're not here.
Wait. Surrender your weapons.
Number 5. When Halloween Was Forever, all about Celtic festivals and the dark origins of Halloween. Halloween in New York City has always been quite an affair, but in When Halloween Was Forever, it literally becomes eternal. Things start with the Ghostbusters clearing out a building stuffed with hairy ghosts while a TV crew broadcasts their heroics. Peter, ever the smooth talker, swears the job went perfect right before the front door collapses behind him. Back at the firehouse, everyone's exhausted, except Egon, who's buried in research. He's detected a massive spike in PKE readings around some Irish ruins that were shipped to a Manhattan museum. The stones date back to the 7th century, and as Egon quietly points out, they're tied to the ancient origins of Halloween. Meanwhile, at the museum, 2 goblins sneak in and chant a name that should never be spoken aloud: Samhain. They scrawl an infinity symbol on an old clock, and from it erupts Samhain himself, the embodiment of Halloween, a huge horned figure who commands every spirit of the night. He immediately takes flight, summoning ghosts across the city. New York becomes a supernatural riot, with specters flooding every street and alley. Back at the firehouse, Janine is thrown across the room when the goblins attack, and Slimer gets dragged away to Samhain's growing army. The demon smells the Ghostbusters on him and offers him a choice to join the horde or perish. Out in the field, the Ghostbusters are losing track of time. Literally, their watches haven't moved in hours. That's when Samhain appears, declaring he's frozen time so Halloween never ends. He sees the Ghostbusters as trespassers meddling in his sacred long night and blasts Peter with dark lightning for his trouble. And although the crew somehow manages to push the demon away for now, back at the firehouse, Egon predicts that Samhain isn't done and that he's patiently waiting to strike again, which he does in another episode. What made Samhain particularly scary was his design. He was a pumpkin-headed demon in flowing robes who represented the genuinely frightening origins of Halloween before it became a commercialized candy holiday. The episode also explored the Celtic festival of Samhain's darker historical roots, when people believed the veil between worlds grew thin and malevolent spirits walked the earth. Number 6. The Collect Call of Cthulhu, when children met H.P. Lovecraft's scariest god. Now, if you ever wondered how a children's cartoon managed to slip H.P. Lovecraft into a Saturday morning slot, The Collect Call of Cthulhu is your answer. The story begins at the New York Public Library, where Professor Ted Klein is having a quiet meltdown over the Necronomicon being put on display. His colleague, Clark Ashton, assures him it is perfectly safe, right before something tears through the wall, steals the book, and knocks out a guard. If you're keeping score, that's Cosmic Horror 1, Library Security 0. By morning, the Ghostbusters are having breakfast and reading about the theft. Ray is thrilled, Egon is worried, Winston is confused, and Peter's focused on his date. Egon explains that the Necronomicon isn't just another dusty relic. It's the most dangerous book ever written, full of spells that can literally open doors between dimensions. Read one aloud and the old ones come a-knocking. Worse still, Egon notes that Cthulhu makes Gozer look like Little Mary Sunshine, which, coming from him, is basically Panic in a lab coat. The trail leads them underground into the sewers, where they're ambushed by the spawn of Cthulhu, tentacled creatures that don't die so much as briefly pause before growing their limbs back. The Ghostbusters fight their way out, soaked, half traumatized, and down one boot. Back at the firehouse, Egon and Ray conclude the spawn were servants of a cult preparing for the real thing. And unfortunately, the stars literally are in alignment that night. They enlist the help from Alice Derleth, a scholar at Miskatonic University, who joins them to track down the cult, but follows his part academic conference, part cosmic war. The Ghostbusters raid a basement full of chanting devotees, only for the cult leader to summon a Shoggoth, an enormous, shapeless monster that could crush a subway car like a soda can. Alice saves the day with a spell that petrifies it, but the victory is brief. The cult moves to Coney Island, where they finally raised Cthulhu from the sea. It goes about as well as you'd expect. Proton packs do nothing, magic spells fizzle, the sky turns red, and Cthulhu towers over them like the end of the world. Then Ray remembers something from an old pulp magazine: electricity. The Ghostbusters lure the creature toward the Cyclone roller coaster, ionize the metal, and channel a lightning strike straight into its mass. Cthulhu dissolves into red mist, the cultists panic, and Winston unmasks the ringleader. It's Clark Ashton. Back at headquarters, Alice decides to take the Necronomicon back to Miskatonic. Peter, naturally, invites her to dinner, because if there's one man who can flirt after banishing an elder god, it's Peter Venkman. Number 7. The Grundle. When a kid's willfully let a ghostly parasite inside them to transform them from innocent to selfish. Some episodes of the real Ghostbusters played like comedy horror, and then there was The Grundle, a story that asked, what if the monster under your bed wanted to make you the monster instead? It opens on a pretty standard night for the team as they're chasing a Jabberwocky down 16th Street after Ray accidentally lured it out through an Alice in Wonderland exhibit. After a lot of yelling, property damage, and one very unhelpful garbage can, Slimer saves the day by dropping the trap at just the right time. Everyone's impressed, morale's up, and then they discover Ecto-1 has been stolen by a teenage delinquent named Larry. As the team wonders what makes a good kid go bad, the real answer is already slinking through the city. The Grundle, a long-limbed parasite in human shape, moves through shadows looking for another. It finds Alec Meredith, a boy tired of being told what to do. The Grundle whispers promises through the window. Promises like no parents, no rules, no guilt. All Alec has to do is let him in. He does. The creature floods the room with red light and begins the slow process of turning Alec into a creature like itself. His brother Lee senses something's wrong, but doesn't yet understand how wrong. Meanwhile, Egon is buried in his lab tinkering with something he can't define. Peter is annoying him into burnout, and Slimer is fast asleep in Peter's bed. But the real trouble begins at the boys' school, where the Ghostbusters arrive to host a safety rally. The Grundle convinces Alec to sabotage the proton packs, and the demonstration turns into chaos. Streams go wild, walls scorched, gym destroyed. Lee, terrified, tells the Ghostbusters about the man in the window. Egon digs into his reference books and finds the answer. The Grundle is a supernatural parasite that preys on children, turning them cruel, dishonest, and eventually inhuman. By the time they reach Alec, he's halfway gone, skin pale, voice echoing like a growl. The Grundle urges him to embrace it, to reject his brother and humanity altogether. Egon warns the team not to fire, as it would hurt Alec too. Peter steps forward instead, forcing Alec to look at the thing that's trying to claim him. Is that what you want to be like? Is it? He demands. Something in Alec snaps back. He rejects the Grundle, and the spell breaks. The Ghostbusters trap the creature while Alec pulls Lee to safety. At the end, Alec, now himself again, asks if he can run the siren on the ride home. Ray tells him that he can do anything he wants. Alec smiles and says maybe he shouldn't. For a kid's show, that's a surprisingly adult lesson. Evil doesn't always come with claws. Sometimes It's a voice that tells you to stop caring. Number 8. Mrs. Rogers' Neighborhood, all about the risks of trusting strangers. If the real Ghostbusters ever had an episode that genuinely flirted with horror, and I mean real horror, Mrs. Rogers' Neighborhood was it. It starts off with the team bored and out of their minds. The phone isn't ringing, and Peter is one bad casserole recipe away from quitting. Then a call finally comes in. An old lady on 1313 13th Street has a haunted house. The name alone should have been a red flag, but hey, business is business. Mrs. Rogers greets them sweetly at the door, complete with a canary in a cage. Ray volunteers to take her back to headquarters for safety while the others sweep the house. That's when things start to go south. The PKE meter goes haywire. Wall starts breathing, and every inch of the place seems alive. One door even speaks the word, "What?" Seconds later, Peter gets yanked straight into the void. Egon checks Tobin's spirit guide, and immediately looks like he wishes he hadn't. Watt, it turns out, isn't just a ghost. He's a Class 7 demonic overlord, the kind who doesn't haunt attics. He invades worlds. And their sweet client? Yeah, that's him. While the team tries to escape the house, Mrs. Rogers is at the firehouse, charming Janine and snooping around the containment unit, the one device separating humanity from a full-scale ghost apocalypse. When Janine mentions it only opens for the Ghostbusters' fingerprints and voices, Mrs. Rogers quietly decides that she'll need one of them instead. Back at the haunted house, things reach a fever pitch. The furniture attacks, the walls grow claws, and the team barely blasts their way out alive. Egon's readings confirm the awful truth. Mrs. Rogers is Watt, using the disguise to trick them. They rush home, but it's too late. Watt has possessed Peter. His face contorts into something inhuman. His voice doubles. And for a few awful seconds, it's unclear if their friend is even there. Egon, because he's Egon, comes up with a risky plan. Split Peter and Watt apart by aligning their proton streams to different energy frequencies. One wrong move, and Peter's atoms scatter from here to Staten Island. As Watt tries to open the containment unit, Janine throws a trap, and Slimer finally earns his keep by kicking Watt's pet demon bird out of the way. The plan works. Watt's ripped free from Peter and sucked into the trap. Mrs. Rogers' house collapses into nothing. Peter's hair is ruined, and Slimer's attempt to help earns him a face full of angry Venkman. The world is safe again. But the takeaway is that sometimes evil doesn't wear fangs. It smiles, bakes cookies, and asks to see your basement, while the episode remains all about fears of trusting strangers and the horror of familiar faces hiding monstrous intentions. Number 9. The True Face of a Monster, all about discriminations, grudges, and prejudices we hold against those around us. This story begins with a hate crime. 3 men vandalizing a synagogue. One starts spray painting a wall, but doesn't get far before a massive clay creature grabs him by the head and drags him off. The next day, 2 of them are in the hospital, half covered in something that looks like clay, but reads as supernatural on a PKE meter. Egon confirms the sample isn't ordinary. It's alive, and it's growing. Meanwhile, Roland and Garrett stop by a basketball court where Garrett joins an old friend, Spencer, in a pickup game. Spencer and his crew treat Roland with barely concealed hostility, but Garrett laughs it off. Later, Roland vents about it to Kylie, who brushes it off as oversensitivity. The show doesn't. It lets the tension hang there, showing how prejudice festers quietly while the supernatural one literally forms in the shadows. Back at the firehouse, Egon's analysis confirms the clay is proto-organic, pulsing with psychokinetic energy. A news report cuts in that talks about how the Beth Shalom synagogue is covered in the same substance. The team races there, but is turned away by the rabbi, who insists the site is under control. Roland's curiosity spikes when the rabbi's student mentions a recent delivery, that is, ancient scrolls from Prague. That night, the Ghostbusters sneak back for a sample, and Eduardo gets attacked by the creature itself. Their proton streams pass right through it, showing that it is immune to the weapon. The entity melts into the ground, reforming inside the synagogue walls. Egon's research soon identifies it as a golem, born of clay, sustained by faith, and designed to protect its people. Only this one has gone rogue. While the team prepares for a second attempt, Garrett hangs with his old friends again, unaware that they plan to finish what they started at the synagogue. When Garrett tries to stop them, they shove him out of his wheelchair and start smashing windows. The golem reawakens and attacks, coating one of them in clay. Even the rabbi can't stop it. Turns out his student, Chime, secretly brought it to life, hoping to defend the community. But hatred, once summoned, doesn't listen to reason. The Ghostbusters finally intervene, luring the golem into a steel factory and using molten metal to weaken it. Kylie pulls the sacred scroll from its mouth, ending its existence and freeing its victims. Chime apologizes, realizing that fighting hate with hate only breeds monsters, both human and clay. It's not a tidy ending, but that's the point. The true face of a monster reminded kids, and frankly adults, that evil isn't always supernatural. Sometimes it's the quiet prejudice we let slide, until something ancient and angry decides to remind us what that really looks like. Number 10. Fear itself, all about mental health, trauma, and psychological resilience. Fear itself might be the most quietly disturbing episode of Extreme Ghostbusters, a story where the monster doesn't rip your skin off, it rips your mind apart. It begins with what looks like a normal bust at a dive bar called Vinny's Club. Garrett dives in first, against Egon's advice, naturally, and takes on a biker ghost solo. The ghost knocks him into a phone booth, and suddenly, Garrett freezes. He's claustrophobic. When the others arrive, they trap the ghost. But something about Garrett's panic sticks out. It's small, but the episode never forgets it. Elsewhere, a developer named Mr. Swank is turning an abandoned building into a nightclub. When his workers uncover a sealed passageway, Swank insists on exploring it himself. The floor gives out and he's left dangling above an abyss as a strange insect-like creature watches him from below. He doesn't make it out the same way he came in. The team gets the call the next day. The victim's covered in a clay-like residue laced with ectoplasmic energy. Egon analyzes it and confirms the presence of a Class 5 demonoid. Something old, psychic, and dangerous. The group heads to the building, which now feels more like a tomb than a construction site. They find the place twisting around them, corridors shifting like a bad dream. Kylie suggests splitting up, which, as every horror fan knows, is the worst idea imaginable. Kylie falls first, straight down a chute into a swarm of maggots that merge into one enormous mass. Roland's equipment fails and mutates into a mechanical beast that drags him down. Eduardo's grabbed by his own corpse, while Garrett is trapped inside a coffin that begins to close in on him. Each one of them faces their own deepest fear: claustrophobia, decay, helplessness, failure, and for a few moments, it looks like they'll lose to themselves. Then Garrett fights back. He refuses to panic, breaks out of the coffin, and drags Kylie to safety. Realizing what's happening, they swap fears. Garrett attacks Eduardo's undead double, and Kylie takes on the maggot. Roland melts his sentient gear. Together, they turn their own anxieties against the creature that created them. When they finally corner the entity, it isn't monstrous anymore. It's terrified. Cowering in the dark, it looks less like a demon and more like the thing fear turns everyone into. The team seals the basement, deciding to let it be. In the end, the message is that fear never really dies. You just learn how to stop letting it own you. So, as you can see, all these episodes pretty much dealt with subjects that kids do not usually have to deal with. But maybe it was the Ghostbuster franchise's way of teaching the kids early on, while reminding the adults what it means to be adults and how their fears can be dealt with. All it takes is a bit of an effort. That was all in this one, guys. See ya. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, be safe, and thanks everyone.